Welcome to my Research Ed Norwich session. My name's Sonia Thompson and I am presenting a topic called Creating a Challenging and Coherent Curriculum for Progress and Pleasure. And this session comes from a new book called The Research Ed Guide to the Curriculum, and it is my chapter in the book. And I'm just going to be going through some of the key principles that I've outlined about the curriculum at St Matthew's School. Before I move on, I am just going to plug the book and say that if you haven't got or read a copy yet, please do get it. There's some really inspiring teachers and educationalists writing about what they're doing with the curriculum, and it's a really useful guide if you are currently working on your curriculum or looking to enhance what you've already got. Who am I then? My name's Sonia Thompson. I am the head teacher at St Matthew's Teaching School, and we are also a research school, and I lead on several curriculum areas. We are an accredited Talk for Writing Training Centre, and I am on the advisory board for the OU UKLA Reading for Pleasure website. I lead a teacher reading group, a teacher reading for pleasure group, and I also judge for the UKLA Book Awards and the Empathy Lab Book Awards. I am passionate about reading for pleasure. Let's move myself. Sorry. Keep going. What matters then, and why? Why do we do what we do at St Matthew's? These are our key principles, really. The things that underpin are the work that we do, reading for pleasure, looking at what our children currently bring into school, which, based on the work of Louis Moll, we call funds of knowledge, building on that existing cultural capital. We definitely are about that powerful subject distinctive knowledge and children working towards that long-term learning, building and deepening their background knowledge. Ensuring that we provide good CPD, strong CPD that's evidence-informed, professional development, learning and development, and also staff wellbeing, working to reduce excessive teacher workload, certainly has been a driving principle for us. Sorry, I'm having trouble moving the slides. Let me see if I can do it this way. In terms of our context, St Matthew's is in Birmingham, and we are in quite a deprived area of Birmingham, a very deprived area, in the 5th quartile. And we work really hard at St Matthew's to ensure that whatever we do enhances, and we are part of the community. We can't move the school. So of course what we've got to do is make what we do work for our children and for our community. So in spite of the income deprivation, in spite of the health needs, we've ensured that what we're giving to the children is as much about quality as we can make it, as much about empowering them and challenging them as we can. So what's the ethos that we work by? We're definitely a church school, so we use that as one of our key principles and key things around our ethos. Our schools are very short and very sharp, and are very useful for keeping the children clear about what they're working towards as well. And it doesn't take much to get them back on track, because we know that behaviour is important. We also have some values: courage, attainment, and pride. And I was looking at these yesterday and really thinking that there's so much challenge within these principles and these values that, again, keep us as educationalists on track at my school, ensuring that, again, we've got a strong sense that underpins the work and why we do what we do. So this is our vision. We are a community of learners. We're providing excellence. We're valuing the children's individuality and heritage, and that's important to me. And then we're motivating them and challenging them to meet the needs of this society that we live in, this complicated society that we live in. As I said, we are aspirational, so as much as possible, we try to offer our children leadership positions. We try and tap into outside organisations, the Brilliant Club, so our children can write dissertations, work with a PhD student, go to a Russell Group university. We employ an organisation called Academic Excellence, and in Birmingham there's quite a competitive nature around grammar schools. So we provide free tutoring for our children to hopefully support the parents to enable their children to go to some of these schools. We also do LAMDA, so the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, where the children learn poetry and prose off by heart and take exams. And our children do really well. And again, it's great for enhancing their learning across the curriculum. So why do we do what we do? It's about choices. That's what we're trying to inspire in our children. This idea that they don't have to go to university, they don't have to move out of Nechells, but they need to be able to have the choice to be able to do that if they want to go to university, to travel the world, to realise that there is a world outside Nechells, to be part of that world, to have a voice, and to pass on that baton to when they grow up and have their own families. And I think the key thing for us is, as I said, that aspiration, those opportunities. And as primary, we're providing and doing our bit in terms of our leg of the journey. So when I spoke at the beginning about children's existing cultural capital, I was making reference to the work of Louis Moll, someone who we've read extensively at St Matthew's, and have really taken on board this idea that children are not deficit, particularly children from areas of deprivation. They come into school with a lot. And what they bring is something called funds of knowledge. They're lived experiences, which are rich repositories. And as learners, as teachers, we need to tap into that and build on it in order to enhance children's learning. So what could those funds of knowledge be? They could be their home language. We know that children who have another language can do well in their learning. Children who have travelled, we know that our children come mainly from Somalia, but lots of their families have not lived in Somalia or have travelled from Somalia to Europe. So they have lots of experiences. They have strong family values and cultures and traditions, which again are useful in school for enhancing what we do. So all these things play a part, and we call it their backpack. That's what they're bringing into school. And for me, this is so important. It means a lot to me because I know, that's me in the corner, I brought my backpack into school, my storehouse, my wealth of knowledge and cultural experiences. I came from a strong Pentecostal family, a family that really taught the Bible, really used oracy, really valued reading for pleasure, and really valued the library. But no one ever asked me at school. No teacher ever asked me about my background. I came from a family of 10, so it was assumed that there was a level of deprivation that actually they didn't need to ask me, they just needed to build on it or build it from scratch. When in fact, I came with a lot. I came with an enthusiasm and a passion for learning. And for me, it's about teachers ensuring that they don't just look at children as deficit, but actually take the time to build on that. So what do we do at St Matthew's? Our curriculum is built around what we call the R's. Our lives and families, and it ends with our future. And we use this to make time within our curriculum to have discussions, to find out what those funds of knowledge are for our children. And it provides a really strong anchor for our teachers to share their funds of knowledge, and for our pupils and their parents to share their funds of knowledge. So we do things like finding out about their lives, their families, their communities, their heritage, the community of Neutrals that they live in. What do they feel about it? What do they like? How can they be part of making it better? What do they like about art? What do they like about music? We spend time, what are they passionate about? We spend time finding out about all of these things. Alongside that, there is an opportunity for us to tap into this idea of a diverse curriculum, valuing our children, valuing diversity, and building in opportunities to make those meaningful links and build those historical narratives that other communities have brought into the world. So this is just examples of the work that the children do around Black and Asian soldiers, and around female heroines in the world wars. So what is the place of knowledge within our curriculum? So we've looked at children's funds of knowledge. Now we're looking at the place of knowledge within our curriculum. And for us, it was about when the national curriculum came, revamped itself in 2013-14, having read the documents, there was lots in there to work from. The idea of essential knowledge, the idea of educating citizens, the idea of the best that's been thought and said. All of those were things that we liked. We thought, yes, we value those. We want our children to have instruction that improves the long-term memory. We want them to remember what we've taught. And I don't think we were as engaged with that as we are now. It was just about teaching and not really expecting that long-term learning to take place. And I think over the years, as we've began to educate ourselves around long-term memory and working memory, as a school, we now begin to understand how important it is for children to use that working memory and move that knowledge into the long-term memory, and also be able to retrieve that. So we've built a curriculum that builds in opportunities for children to be able to do that. So what does our journey look like? We had a vision that included challenge and ambition. We went to conferences, we read a lot, research ed, we trialed things, we got feedback, we adjusted, we rolled it out, and then we adjusted again. And it is very much an ongoing process that doesn't stop, and we're constantly moving it forward. So this is what it looks like. Between 2013 and 2018, we embedded some of this practice and then moved it forward from 2018 into 2020, particularly looking at how do we apply some of those key principles of teaching into all of our subject areas, including our foundation subjects. So again, really important that we were building that, as well as focusing on that subject-specific professional development and learning. Whilst we were looking at that, we were also very much aware that developing a curriculum, a challenging curriculum, would bring workload. So of course it was an opportunity to look at our other curriculum areas and also decide what were the schemes of work that we could tap into, who were the people that we could tap into, what were the organisations that we could tap into. Tried and tested opportunities to work with people who had good reputations so that we could work on then decreasing our workload. So this slide just really goes through some of those key things that we've also put into place alongside our knowledge-rich curriculum. Part of that then, working towards this subject distinctiveness, was tapping into the subject associations. Ruth Ashby and Christine Council talk about, in the curriculum, the Research Ed curriculum book, talk about identifying the beauty in the subject. And it's an ongoing journey for us, but certainly the subject associations have been really, really important in developing our understanding of what each of the subject areas need to have in place. So when we went on to then begin our planning, these are the things that we wanted our teachers to focus on, and we wanted to focus on to support our teachers. Give you a chance to read those. So building in those opportunities alongside those good teaching and learning pedagogies. So this is an example of how I just fed in some of these key principles into my training for our History Week, which didn't happen due to lockdown. But what I wanted the teachers to just revisit was my vision for history as the subject lead. What is it that I want and need the teachers to know, but I also need the teachers to get the children to understand as well. So the idea that we're learning history for its intrinsic value, to enrich and empower, to be inspired by what we learn, and the opinions and the interpretations of history. So just being really clear about my vision. Again, being clear about the national curriculum and the expectations, the key concepts that I needed the teachers to understand and to be able to deliver to the children. Again, going back to the History Association and ensuring that there's a clear understanding in terms of the subject knowledge, what they're saying, how can that support us in our understanding? And also a clarity around the concepts within history and ensuring that those are being delivered rather than just history information, but there's an underpinning of those key concepts that the children need to know and be grounded in order to apply, the curriculum areas. As part of being a member of the History Association, we do have access to Primary History, which is one of their journals. And again, it was a case of giving teachers opportunities to read the fantastic articles within the journals, which really support that understanding and subject knowledge, understanding how to deliberately teach those concepts. So just tapping into some training that I was able to go on, where Claire Seeley just really explained to us this idea that we learn the Romans, and there's some key things that we learn about the Romans, but as part of that we've got to go beyond the topic, and this is where we build that idea of the concepts and the schema within our subject areas. What is it that we need the children to remember? So this is our curriculum map, and you can see from our map that we've tried to build in those underlying principles and concepts that we need the children to remember, and make those links across curriculum areas as well. In his book, Young talks about powerful knowledge, and he talks about it as a way of enabling students to acquire knowledge that takes them beyond their own experiences. So I said that at St Matthew's, we value their backpack, we value their funds of knowledge, but we're also working towards enabling our students to go beyond their experiences as well. And that's important for us. So this idea that each discipline has its substantive knowledge in history, and particularly looking at history, as I said, and that disciplinary knowledge, making sure teachers understand the differences and how they work together, as Christine Council says. As a teacher, we've got to shuffle between those two in order to really build the traditions of our subject area. So how do we acquire knowledge within our St Matthew's curriculum? These are the things that we do and the opportunities that we provide. All important. We also ensure that there's progression, and again, going back to the History Association, building that in and in showing these resources to the teachers and making sure that they understand that they're there. We've also produced some secure subject knowledge documents that go through what is it that we want the children to know by the end of this unit, what's the hinterland, what's the core knowledge. So all that's given to the teachers. And then our history sessions are framed around inquiry questions. And again, really supportive in terms of building the sequence of lessons and enabling the children to really look at those disciplinary focus areas within history. We use the Writing Revolution as a great tool for working within those foundation subject areas and building that non-fiction writing and that non-fiction understanding. And if you haven't read the Writing Revolution, Judith Hockman, I really, really do press you to have a look. There's some really useful ideas in there. And then making sure that reading's embedded in all of our curriculum areas. You can see that these are two of the books that we use within our history curriculum across both Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. Ensuring that we're teaching the history skills, and then building storytelling and making sure that the narratives that surround history, that are embedded within history, are clear. And that often includes mapping out stories, as we are taught for writing school, and helping the children's memory. So as part of that inclusive curriculum, looking at the stories around the Black emperors and Islamic civilization, which again really feeds in well with our Muslim population, our Muslim cohort of children, 86% Muslim children. So it's really useful for them to find out about some of the strong people within the history who created lots and lots of important ideas that are still in place now. So what resources do we use? As I said, primary history. We have got knowledge organisers, which are not the curriculum, but we use to just enhance the children's learning, to ensure that they can take them out and apply this information into other curriculum areas. So using it as a tool and not just as a tool just for quizzing, but a tool for supporting and embedding their learning. We use a website called Meanwhile Elsewhere, which again is really supportive of what was going on in the world during those periods that we study. And then just guiding the teachers back to some of that important reading that will help with enhancing their subject knowledge. So this is from retrievalpractice.org and a really useful website for supporting teachers with how to build those ideas around retrieval practice. We also look at assessment, and again, Claire Seeley made it clear. So in our assessment, we're making sure that we're going back to what does our subject discipline need us to ensure that we've taught and that the children have learnt. What are those key concepts? How we use the information from the quizzing and the knowledge organisers to feed into those end of unit assessments. We also bring our learning together creatively. So we build our learning in the classroom. And we also write, using our inquiry questions, essays. And again, we were writing essays before, but the training that I went on with Claire Seeley, again, just really brought it home that the children will show their learning in their writing. And we need to see those concepts and those underpinning ideas within their essays. So not just people, but male citizens. Not the Romans didn't just beat, but they conquered. And it's that language and it's that understanding that will show us that the children have embedded that learning and whether or not they can take it on and apply it, as I said, into other curriculum areas. So these are just some examples: reception of our essays, year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. And year 4 was quite interesting because we introduced the chemets into when we were looking at the ancient Greeks and did some real comparisons when we were looking at the legacies. And it was really interesting for the children to understand about the chemets and the value and what they brought to the historical discussions. Year 5 and also year 6. And again, this is a discussion here for year 6 where they had to apply their learning using 3 different protagonists within and their claim to the English throne. And here's a child who's using some of that subject knowledge to research, to plan and to write without any teacher support at all. So again, just showing that we're embedding the learning. And then as part of our art, for instance, showing their learning in their art pieces, in their art journals that we use, and celebrating that in an art gallery, which we invite parents to. So that's our curriculum, one part. And then I'm going to move now into our reading and how reading is at the heart, again, of what we do. And often schools talk about this professional tension between I've got to teach them how to read and I've got to read for pleasure, but I haven't got time to read for pleasure. And at St Matthew's, we made a decision that we don't want there to be any tension anymore. We've got time. We've got to make time to do both. Because the research is clear. Teresa Kremin, in her writing, talks about the fact that the will to read, that reading for pleasure, influences the skill. And the research says, in building communities of engaged readers, that children who read for pleasure do well across the curriculum. I'm really flagging these two books up because I was involved in the original research, the Building Communities of Readers. 10 years ago, we've been talking about reading for pleasure. And that research culminated in the book Building Communities of Engaged Readers. And it's a really useful research guide that supports schools in building a reading for pleasure culture. The research revealed that teachers' knowledge of children's literature and children as readers were two really important areas that if schools could crack that, then children would do well across the curriculum. So, the significant benefits of reading for pleasure, what are they? Children actually do well in England in terms of reading tests, but when it comes to reading for pleasure, we're actually ranked quite low. Children say they do not enjoy reading for pleasure. But the research says that actually just the focus on assessment of reading does take away from the opportunities for the less keen readers who, if they acquire the will to read, can build on that into the skills of reading. So this is what the international evidence says. And again, just backs up this idea that actually increased attainment in literacy and numeracy often comes from this ability to read for pleasure and enjoy reading. So these are the pedagogies that the Building Communities of Readers book pulled out, 5 key pedagogies. And as part of that, there is a reading for pleasure website called Research Rich Pedagogies, and it goes through that research and pulls out some documents, PowerPoints, clips, teacher examples of practice for schools to use to support their reading for pleasure development. And it's all underpinned by evidence. The evidence documents are there as well. The research summaries are there. So what does it look like in our school? Well, it looks like this. Reading spaces, themed reading spaces, multiple copies of books so children can have discussions around reading for pleasure texts. Reading for pleasure across subject areas. So we've got RE as an area that children can choose books and read around those subject areas. We also have examples of our teachers reading for pleasure. This is my deputy head teachers. She's the maths lead. And in her office, when children come in, she's showing them that she reads around her subject. My assistant head, he's showing that he is a reader. And he's got books there that the children can borrow, opportunities for the children to discuss books with him as well. If children come into my office, this is what they see. They see that I'm a reader, that I enjoy reading for pleasure, and I share that with them often. You'll find me with a book all the time. As part of our school, we also operate as a testing centre for the Children's Book Awards, and that provides us with lots of opportunities for the children to become critical readers, reviewing books, giving their opinions about books, not just the positives, but also looking for the challenges as well. It also means that we do have sometimes the opportunity to go to the Book Awards, and there we are with an author, Corgi Paul, who wrote The Worst Witch, and we were able to go on stage and present as well. Linked to that then is this idea of author visits, and the National Literacy Trust produced a document, a report in 2017 that talked about the impact of author visits. It says twice as many children and young people who receive an author visit will go on to have above expected levels of reading, above their peers who don't have visits. So that in itself, is a real a challenge for schools to say that, yes, we do need to get authors into schools, alongside other key outcomes, key successes around author visits. So this year, we've had two authors in school, and the passion and the enthusiasm that they encouraged within our children was palpable. So the research is clear. Author visits work. The OU UKLA research also talks about knowing what children want to read, and we asked our children, what would you like us to bring into school for you to read? And they were very much about comics, magazines, annuals, and it inspired particularly our boys to create their own magazines, and were secretly selling these magazines. And I caught one group and asked them what they were doing. Saw money being exchanged, and they said, "Oh, miss, this is what it is." I said, "Get over here," and found out that they'd produced this beautiful magazine, and encouraged them to move it forward. And they even sell to our visitors. That's Pike Albert when he came into school, and they managed to sell one to him for £5, which is great entrepreneurial skills. And we're really proud of the fact that we were awarded the UKLA Reading for Pleasure School of the Year award, which really just celebrated the fact that reading for pleasure is important to us. Evidence-based reading for pleasure. Sorry, I've skipped a few slides. So moving on from that then, I talked about the reading for pleasure aspect. I'm going to look now at the reading for progress aspect, which, as I talked about, the will influencing the skill, and we're just as passionate about teaching the skills to children as we are about teaching the will to children. So the EEF guidance document talks about this idea of a balanced reading curriculum, and it used Scarborough's reading rope to talk about the challenges of teaching reading, those interwoven strands, that we have to get to grips with this idea of language comprehension, doing that really well, and word recognition, doing that really well. So having a strong phonics teaching within your school, but also building that background knowledge, vocabulary, and that fluency. The evidence, again, from the EEF guidance talks about the fact that there is no one way to teach reading. So it works really. Your best bet is to do a little bit of everything. So that balance for the children to do really well. Let me move me out of the way again. So this is an example of the St Matthew's reading curriculum, and it shows the will and the skill elements together. So the reading for pleasure alongside really challenging opportunities for phonics, comprehension, teaching comprehension skills, but the application of comprehension skills into those shared reading sessions. So that really is our reading curriculum, and it's really important and a really important focus that we constantly look at. What we're trying to do is to make sure that we've got all opportunities, so the opportunity to read silently within our curriculum. We can see the benefits of that. We can see the limits of that. The opportunity to read aloud. I'm sorry about the slides being slightly off. And the benefits of being read to. So the benefits of being read to are really important as well. So all those, the benefits we need to maximise. And then we also need to minimise those limitations, because of course all of these areas do have limitations. But what we're trying to do is build the reading road miles, because the research says that the more the children read, the better. Read more, do better. Reading road miles need to be enhanced. Hence why we are very much about reading across the curriculum. And again, we're going back to the national curriculum, which talks about reading for pleasure opportunities, reading across the curriculum opportunities. It talks about information retrieval in those other subject areas. So again, that real clarion call for that wide, enhanced curriculum, not the narrowing of the curriculum, but opportunities for history, geography, science, so that children can read and widen their background knowledge. That's what we're trying to do. Going back to Scarborough's reading rope, it talks about background knowledge and the importance of that background knowledge. What does it bring to children's understanding? Hirsch, in his book, The Knowledge Deficit, talks about when we're talking about reading comprehension, it is the background knowledge that we need to enhance. Usually when there's a problem, it's because the children don't know enough in order to apply that to their reading. So background knowledge is important. Donna Wright says, prior knowledge creates a scaffolding for information in the memory. And if you want to read more about that, amplify.com is a great website for supporting teachers to understand a little bit more. So I was very, very privileged to go to Doug Lemov's Reading Reconsidered training. And that was in 2016. So we've been using Doug Lemov's principles around close reading to support our reading, our teaching of reading, particularly the shared reading elements, and applying those comprehension strategies. One of the key things, the memorable things that he talked about, was this idea of using non-fiction and positioning it with a fiction text. So Paddington, when that is being read to children, there's often a breakdown in their understanding, their background knowledge, because they might not know about Buckingham Palace or changing of the guards, or who is the Queen Elizabeth, what's her background, why is there changing of the guards because of her. This idea that Paddington likes marmalade, what is marmalade? It's certainly not something that most of the children within our culture would be familiar with. And this idea of Paddington as a refugee. So inserting non-fiction into that reading curriculum, and not just doing non-fiction separately, enhances the reading road miles, as well as enhances the children's background knowledge. Alongside that then is vocabulary acquisition, and just do quotes. And when I went on the Doug Lemov training, he introduced me to Isabel Beck's book, which we know is that real underpinning book for language. I'm also flagging up Alex Quigley's book and his website that has some great resources on. So Reading Reconsidered talks about providing those explicit opportunities to teach vocabulary, and as part of that, at St Matthew's we have a vocabulary journal where we are able to embed those explicit opportunities for teaching vocabulary, not just in reading but in other curriculum areas as well. So this is an example in RE. And here's some vocabulary work in RE, some in design technology, science, and in history. And of course we use our knowledge organisers and build that into our vocabulary teaching and learning as well. Just to flag up then that there is a case study of St Matthew's reading and what we do in Alex Quigley's new book, Closing the Vocabulary Gap. So there is our case study in there if you want to read a little bit more. So coming to the end of my session, again just flagging up that it is the chapter in the new Research Ed book, The Curriculum, edited by Claire Seeley. And it going over, hopefully you've got a sense of what matters to us at St Matthew's and the why it matters. And building that, and the idea that our curriculum is ongoing, ever evolving across all of the discipline areas. Just a reminder that if you are planning curriculum changes, as an EEF research school, the implementation document is really supportive. There's no point planning changes if you've not explored whether it's going to be sustainable and you're going to be able to prepare and deliver it. So the document, the implementation document, just provides a great foundation for building a model for those changes that you'd want to make around your curriculum. So just flagging up that guidance. Thank you for listening. And if you do want to get in touch on this slide, there's just some details about our research school. So my name's Sonia Thompson, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Research Ed Norwich. Thank you.